Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Hightown. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, there's a whole situation with Jackie. Obviously, she tracks down Anthony, and it's like, yo, Anthony, where's Krista? Anthony being the deep, like, I guess Jackie could have just been like, yo, this is why I'm looking for Krista. She's in danger. Truth be told is, I don't know if Anthony would have helped, but if he thought Krista was in danger, maybe he'd think like, I'll tell you where she is so you could get her the hell out of my life, because the last thing I want is her danger coming towards me. So Jackie probably could have handled things a little bit better, but she's just like, I'm looking for Krista, and it's like, but, Anthony had to be the dick that he was. I mean, especially in front of, like, the people he's working with. Like, I'm sure he had a showboat a little bit, but the fact of the matter is, it's like, maybe Jackie had kind of explained, I don't know. I mean, the fact of the matter is, she follows him for a while, and he smashes up, like, the headlights from car. I'm like, oh, that sucks. That's, obviously, I won't, it's like, well, I guess there's no point explaining it's not even your car, because I was like, oh, that's not going to really do anything, because it's like, it's not going to stop him from smashing it up twice. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, well, you have leverage over him. It's like, I got your wife's number. It's like, no one's home. It's like, oh yeah, so tell me where Krista is. It's like, all right, this is where Krista is, so it's like, obviously she feels good. She's like, yes, she's celebrating. Because it's interesting because, was it Ed that actually suggested she go to a meeting? She's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, that's so interesting. And I like that the scene hard cuts to Krista in a meeting, and I'm like, I guess that's supposed to be the irony behind it, because she thinks she's so on top of her sobriety and stuff like that she doesn't need, a meeting or whatever. That the fact of the matter is, if she had actually gone to one locally, she would have run into Krista. I guess it also didn't cross her mind, and that's also something too, is like, obviously showing she's not a detective, because it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, Krista is someone who is struggling, has had addiction issues, so like, maybe finding a local place for meetings, but I think for Jackie, it never really crossed her mind, because like for her sobriety, like it's just kind of, once again, she's, as her doctor said, was the whole thing is like being on a pink cloud. You think like, oh, like I'll never slip back. It's not that big of a deal, So for her, she, once again, she just like, then she gets that lady to let her into Krista's, room, but it's like, oh, no one's there, so she leaves a note and everything. But when Krista gets back, she sees a note, and we don't know what Jackie said, but it might, it's like, regardless of what Jackie said, Krista's like, shit, someone who knows about all of this knows where I'm at. Like, because for her, she, because I feel like if it was someone that was after you like that, they wouldn't leave a damn note. But Krista's probably not thinking like that. It's just kind of like, no, like, I don't care who left the note. That means someone knows where I am. That person could get followed. That means other people might know where I am. It's probably, So she calls up Anthony. Anthony's like, oh, we're done. Don't ever call me again. Because some lady came looking for you. Obviously, lady's not the word to use. Came looking for you. Fact of the matter is, threatened to call my wife about you. It's like, I'm done. We're done. And the sad thing is, because even Chris had said it during her meeting. She's like, yeah, Anthony's an asshole, but at the very least, she's like, I'm alive, and I have my friend recently died. I can't talk to anybody about it. And the sad thing is, we see. It's like, it's so interesting, the parallels they created, because like Jackie's, actually her life is good, because it's like, oh man, Honeker's putting you on this operation and stuff like that, really? And I love that, it being like, she's like, you're not messing with me, right? And Honeker is like, you're a terrible agent and you're a piece of shit, but you're our piece of shit agent, so, and so things are working good for her. She's kind of got her job back, at least a little bit. But sadly for Krista, everything's falling apart because she literally has no one she can turn to. Anthony was kind of like, yeah, she wasn't turning to him for comfort. At the very least, he gave her somewhere to stay. But now he's cut her off. It's like she has nowhere. She can't go home. We already saw, like, she tried to go home to her mom. Wasn't going to let that happen. And, still dealing with the sad thing is, she was already teetering. She was already struggling. She said 47 days is the longest she's been clean, and that all went down the drain because of Jackie. It's like, because Jackie, I guess, doesn't think about the consequences. It's just like, it's sad. It's like, yes, you had the best of intentions, but you basically put her in a position where she had to, because even, it's like, oh, because she was asking the lady, like, oh, does she get high? And she's like, yeah, maybe. And she was already, in her mind, I guess she was like, yeah, after everything she went through, maybe she is getting it, It never crossed your mind, I guess, once again, it just, I think because her sobriety is the way it is in her own mind, that I think she almost associates anyone else's sobriety with that. I think she was just under the assumption, like, oh yeah, she must be using it again or something like that. Like, I don't know, because for Jackie, in her mind, it's not that much of a struggle. For other people, obviously it is, so it's a complicated, situation, and I'm just it sucks that she put her, put Krista in that position. It's like, especially because Krista's, she's high and everything, so she opens up to Scotty about Sherry being killed, and she's like, you can't tell him. I'm like, why would you? Once again, she's not thinking. She's high right now. She's not thinking. I'm like, oh, that's going to come back to bite you in the ass. He's definitely going to run his damn mouth. And it's because I think it's all connected. I mean, especially like that circle of people. You tell one person that one person ends up telling someone else, and that ends up back in Osito's ears, Especially, interestingly enough, after the whole situation with Osito going to see Junior about the whole Krista thing, and he's the one that tried to make Osito feel better about it, because it turns out, because I was under the impression like Tina was like Kizzle's girl. It's not, but Tina at that place is connected to at least one of Osito's boys, which passed the name Krista on, because it's like, oh yeah, some random lady was looking for someone named Krista, who apparently saw Sherry's murder. And then it's like, you were there, right? And he was like, yeah. Did you see anybody? He was like, nah. See, like, people in that place, like, he's like, trust me, like, I was there. Like, the fact of the matter is, anyone, heads will do anything to get, money high or whatever. And he's like, well, to be fair, she does want money. See, she's lying, man, And then Osito says, maybe not, and drives away. And I'm like, okay. So at the very least, because he's like that, even he's not 100% sure, means that that shouldn't blow back on Junior being like, whoa. I mean, to be fair, it will if it comes up of like, whoa, the lady that's looking into this is someone you know. And it's like, whoa, I've been seeing you talking to her. She said, argument could be like, oh, I didn't know that was Jackie looking into that. Oh yeah, Jackie, my girl. Yeah, I don't know what she's up to, But the fact of the matter, it's hard to say whether Junior's freaking out a little bit like that. My initial thought was like, because Jackie's in the middle of this. Like, Jackie's a good friend of his, so for him, it's like, if they looking for Krista, they're going to be looking for Jackie, because Jackie's the one asking about Krista. It's like, the last thing we need is other people connected to this. So it's like, if Jackie's connected to all this in some shape or form, she has to be taken care of. So maybe that's his worry, or maybe it is kind of, the other side of things could be like, he's worried that if word comes out that he knew something about Krista and didn't say anything, which even I'm surprised. I halfway expected him to use that situation before now, but I guess because Jackie's involved, he's trying to, for one, he knows what will happen if they find Krista. He doesn't want another death on his conscience, because yes, he had nothing to directly do with Sherry dying, but he helped dispose of her body and cover up a crime. So I'm sure that, especially now when life is better for him, him and Donna are hitting up again. They're better. He goes, to a family get together with her side of the family. Her dad, a lot more receptive. Mom, hell no. It's like, oh yeah, your daddy? Yeah, I was the one who actually held you first, because your daddy didn't even show up at the hospital when you were born. He was like, yeah, I should go. She's like, nah, stick around, have a sausage. It's like, Donna tries to make him feel better about it, though, by being like, the only person whose opinion mattered. And he's like, God. She's like, fuck God, no. She's like, mine, the opinion of your the mother of your child, and if I forgive you, that's all you need. And I think, it's confronting a lot of your past. I'm sure it's confronting your past of like, oh yeah, like I did a lot of shit that I'm not proud of when I was high. And also the fact of the matter is, even being sober, there's so much shit that I have done I'm not proud of with this whole Sherry thing. So it's like, especially because all of that, especially because Osito pulled up in and like, he's like, yo, oh, you at your baby mama's house? He's like, oh yeah, I know, I asked your mom. And it's like, shit, it's like you rolling up at my baby mama's house like that, and it's just my baby mama's mom's house like that. It's not, it's not the, or was it Donna's place? I think, I think it is just Donna's place, maybe, whatever the case may be. It's both his worlds colliding, so it's just, now there's a point where those two being separate might not be the case anymore. So it's like, what the hell do you do in that situation? Especially later on, because he's even telling Jackie, he's like, yeah, if Krista says anything to you, because he's like, I guess for him, it's like, got to stay in the loop about this whole situation, because I guess for him, he doesn't know how much she saw or how much she knows. So I think he's also worried about his own involvement in all this, because Krista could, bringing Osito down could ultimately end up bringing him down if it turns into like a Rico situation. Obviously the only person they're after is Osito, but obviously Junior played his own part too, and disposing of her body and everything. But I don't know. Not 100% sure what's going through, everybody's mind, in this situation. There's that whole situation with Ray that I love, Ray and Ethan, where it's like he's like, oh yeah, man, he's boosting, like the whole point is like, oh, like I want you to be my, my informant and stuff like that. He's like, oh yeah, so like if I do rat and stuff like that, I don't have to worry about that. If I become an informant and stuff, he's like, no, don't worry about that. And they just start casually talking and stuff. He's like, oh wow, you went here to school. It's like, oh man, yeah, sadly you got hooked on Oxy. But it's like, who I really blame? Big Pharma. Yeah, like and it's just like, yeah, like he's bonding with him, and he's like, oh, because like Ethan was like, oh yeah, I'd like to be a cop. He's like, the fact of the matter is, what was it? He was with the scouts or whatever, and he was like, oh really? Ray's like, really? Me too. He's like, yeah, what troop you belong to? Ray just kind of looked down and was like, that fell apart really quickly. Like you lying just to kind of build kinship with him, but obviously gives him stuff about Osito, Kizzle. As I even brings up like, oh, his girl and Osito's girl and everything. So it's like, all right, no, man, you're giving me good information. The fact of the matter is, I'm gonna get you to wear a wire. He's like, I don't know about it. He's like, no, man, hey, Ethan, I believe in you. So it's like, and then, he brings that up to Alan, and it's like, oh yeah, Osito drives different cars and stuff like that. Alan, could you look into that for me? It's like, sure. He goes, meets the dude Lou, and it's like, yeah. It's like, wait, who's the person over there? It's like, oh, Ray. It's like, Ray. It's like, yeah. Oh, you know him? He's like, yeah. Tell that Peckerwood I don't forget. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And I even love Alan being like, all right, you set me up like that. He's like, Ray's like, what are you talking about? He's like, Lou, who are you talking about? It's like, what'd you do? He's like, the fact of the matter is you're just going to send me because you thought, oh, a brother's going to hook another brother up. And he was like, nah, I just figured you have a better chance. But you being black being a bonus. He's like, oh, being black being a bonus. Well, for the first time, it's like, what did you do, Ray? He's like, that's not important. I'm like, did you bang his wife or something? I'm like, that seems super personal. Even effed up for him to be like, yeah, I sent you there because I figured you have a better chance. Plus, you being black wasn't help too. It's like, man, Ray, you're such a skeezy piece of shit. Then there's the whole situation of like, oh yeah, getting Ethan, wired up and everything. It's like, oh, you call us, you keep the phone online, you talk to Kizzle. Obviously, Ethan's not trained for this. You didn't really properly prep him, so he's pushing for certain things. But he kept bringing up Osito. Osito's like, oh, why you want to bring up Osito's girl? Why you only into fucking other people's girls? He's like, what? I thought that's where things were going because Kizzle kept being like, oh, you sure you have sex with Emily? He's like, I don't know, mate, I don't know. And it's like, you fucked my girl, blah, 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 blah. And then starts beating the shit out of him. And Alan's about to go in there, but then Ray locks the door and he's like, nah, the kid can handle himself because he was like, play like on football or something like that. He's like, nah, the kid got it. And the kid's still getting his ass kicked, and he's like, all right, and lets Alan go. He's like, you're a real piece of shit, Ray. Luckily, because obviously he didn't want to break their cover and stuff like that, but enough time passed, he was able to skew it to be like, oh yeah, we weren't, yeah, thanks for that disturbance call. Yeah, he was able to kind of lie his way through that. And the interesting thing is, Ethan was like, did I do good? He's got blood in his nose, and he's like, I didn't hit him back or anything. And Alan's like, yeah, kid, you did good. I was like, I just felt a little bit. I was like, he did it on purpose because he wants to make them proud. It's like, oh, that's actually a little sad. And he was just like, oh, I didn't fight back because like I figured this would help you guys out. Like I did good, right? And it's like, oh shit. It's kind of like it breaks your heart a little bit. You're like, oh, dude, oh. But nevertheless, then when they're in there with Kizzle, they start picking up the fact that it's like, all right, you're connected to Osito, and it's like, oh, you might even be connected to the Sherry murder. But even interestingly enough, like he started getting heated about the thing, and then like Alan had to pull him off, and he's like, what the hell was that about? He's like, what's this about Sherry? It's like, because that's what's the most, cause obviously for him, this is the most important thing, not even just taking down Osito in general, it's about Sherry specifically. He's like, actually, I don't even want to know. Part of me is like, the relationship he has with Renee is probably the same one he had with Sherry. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but it's like, why are you getting so, it's I mean, I feel like there's such a detachment between a cop and their CI. It's like, I figure she was just your informant, but it's like, no, it's more than that. Like, there was something there. Like, there was some probably intimate relationship. I'm assuming. We'll find out, maybe. But he goes, meets up with Renee. She's at home. Hell, he'd even stopped by the club earlier, and there's like tacos being made and stuff like that. And she's like, being like, hey, so happy to see him and stuff like that. And he's just like, no, I just came here for a little bit of food and stuff like that. And you're just like, then like the innuendo, he's like, oh yeah, like, I love to eat. And she's like, oh, I know you do. And it's like, Jesus. And even being like, oh, Frankie doesn't do that, I'll kill him, along with me taking him down, I'm gonna kill him for not doing, it's just like, okay. But him and Renee do their thing, and Renee was just kind of like, okay, the thing with, well, for one, we opened up a little bit more about Ray. I thought was kind of interesting. He's like, are you married? He's like, used to be, got any kids, has a 17-year-old son. I was like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting. And almost at the end, I was like, oh, you're going to be like, I'm messing with you. I thought that's the direction was going. I was like, oh no, he's straight up like, oh yeah, like he ended up, it was a problem the moment me and his mom split. He chose his mom over me. And obviously, like, Renee trying to make him feel better. It's like, yeah, I'm not mother of the year either. I was still high. I was still using when I was pregnant with Frankie, But it's like she made the decision one day that wasn't going to be who she is. And, Ray trying to make him feel better, being like, yeah, that isn't who you are. That's not you. And so it's a situation of like, but she's also like, yeah, I don't want to be your informant anymore. I'm not going to be your snitch. So like, I guess it's like because they're in this relationship, right? Because of things happening right now. I mean, I don't know if they even describe it as a relationship, but because of us being intimate and stuff like that, she's like, that snitch stuff, it's done. And he's like, all right, yeah, it's done. But then he casually brings up Osito's girl's name because he doesn't know her name. And she's like, oh yeah, like her. And like, I'm not even realizing that Renee dropped her name, even brings up her last name, because it turns out her dad works in an auto shop. It didn't even cross my mind until he rose up there. Then I'm like, right, because they were trying to figure out how Osito was getting his cards. It's like, this must be the connect. I'm wondering, is his girl's dad hooking him up, or is she the one hooking him up? Like how that whole situation works. Kind of feels like it might be the former, just because like when Ray, shows up, because he even had this thing where he was like, what the fuck are you doing, Ray? Like, I think like the whole him and Renee situation, it might be a thing of history repeating itself type of thing. I don't know. Because obviously she's trying to get close to Ray because Frankie wants that. But at the same time, like, why not stay? I guess because she wants to make it seem more legitimate, so he's more likely to let down his guard. Because if it's kind of just like, oh no, we're in a relationship type of situation, if she's able to kind of make him think it's 100% that and not just like a police thing of like, oh, I'm also your snitch, like maybe that will make it so that he'll let his guard down more and she can kind of pump him for information like Frankie kind of wants. Maybe, I don't know. But at least it makes him feel a little complicated about it. Or maybe he felt bad because it's like, oh, I'm getting information from her even though I told her like I'm not going to get information from her. I don't know. But what I loved is when he rolls up and it's like, oh, he talks to the dude there. It's like, oh yeah, when's your boss gonna be in? And he's like, who's asked? And then he looks and it's freaking Osito over there. I was like, oh, and Osito's just casually talking to him. I'm like, does Osito not? I was like, they've never actually met face to face, have they? But he knows Ray, right? Because didn't he come questioning Renee about Ray? I think he did. I don't remember. But that's why I was like, does he know about Ray? And he's just having a casual conversation with him, and Ray's just acting cool and calm. Oh yeah, I'm just driving a piece of shit Dodge. He's like, oh yeah, like let me tell you what I'm driving, and here's my license plate. Just so when you follow me around, I'm like, all right. So I was like, okay, Osito ain't no idiot. Like he's pretty smart about this shit. Like, oh, he knew like Ray was following, even Ray being like, kind of impressed. So this definitely ain't gonna be as easy as you think it is. Even to the point Osito rode up, like showed him, it's like, oh yeah, I'm here. He could have kept quiet, laid back in the shadows, but it's like, oh no, I'm here. I let you know that I know you're following me. So that's really interesting. At the same time, all this situation is going down. There's the whole situation with Jackie. They get the operation she's a part of and everything. And it was supposed to be kind of something a little simple, but Jackie suggested, no, let them cross over to, what was it, like to Rhode Island or whatever. Then it becomes a federal case. Then you maneuver, because like, was his name George? His, his uncle, wasn't his uncle or dad or something like that. Whoever it is, like in his family, saw a bigger shot. So it's like, oh, let's use George to roll on so-and-so. And even Ed being like, when the hell have you wanted to do more work? And she's like, yeah, I'm a changed person, especially because she met up with her ex again. It's like, oh, here's your car back. I did all this other stuff. Plus the headlight. She's like, I'm super sorry. I'm going to pay you back. And even her ex being like, wow, you said sorry and twice. Who's the woman from? And she's like, I'm changed. Like, things can be different this time. So it's like, oh, dinner tomorrow? Hell yeah. So it's like, okay. Once again, things are looking up for Jackie. Not so much for, Krista. But the fact of the matter is, They end up taking down George. It's a federal case. It's like, oh shit. Like, once again, Jackie's on top of the world. Honeker's like, honestly, all right, you mess up again, you're shit out of luck. But the fact of the matter is, for now, you get your job back. They're celebrating and everything like that. Drinks in front of them. And I'm like, all right, Jackie, this is going to be the moment. She drops it. And you're like, all right. Not drops. I shouldn't have said drops, because she pops it back and you're like, okay, that's not good. You can tell that's going to be a domino effect of issues later. Because once again, she thinks like, that's one drink, it's no problem. It's like, when you're an addict, like all it takes is one to kind of send you spiraling. Like, once again, she doesn't recognize, like she still only has like a handful of days, which every day is important. But for her, she feels like, oh, like I'm on top of this thing. I don't have to worry about it. It's like, all right, I'm gonna take a little celebratory drink. Life is good. But it's like, especially when you're trying to get back with your ex, this is the worst time to be potentially spiraling too. So a lot of shit's probably going to hit at once next time. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But I think things are going to start going a little downhill for Jackie, especially just getting your job back. Like I said, everything's coming up Jackie. And it's like, I think this is when you're going to probably hit your lowest low. It seems like you were at your lowest low before, but it's probably going to be coming up, especially if you find out about this whole Krista. I don't know. We'll see how that whole Krista thing ends up playing out. I don't see that ending well at all, but we'll kind of have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.